Hello, Walking the Ropes fans. I am Blake, and welcome to the next episode of Walking the Ropes Wrestling Review for AEW Dynamite from Cincinnati, Ohio. In today's show, we have another Rhodes down, the best faction in pro wrestling is complete, and a bloody main event. But before that, make sure to check out the Walking the Ropes link tree for all things Walking the Ropes. To open the show, we had a singles match between Dustin Rhodes and Malachi Black. And Dustin jumped Malachi right off the gate, and he hit a German suplex out of the corner and dropped a big elbow on Black. And he then took it outside, and he continued to beat on Malachi. And Dustin goes for a Canadian Destroyer, but Malachi stops him and hits a back body drop through the timekeeper's table. During this time, Malachi takes advantage and tears off the turnbuckle pad, and then turns his attention back to Dustin and brings him back in the ring. Where he hits a big knee and then gets a near fall. Malachi locks in a headlock and Dustin fights out, but Black then switches it to a heel hook, which Dustin fights to get to the ropes, and Malachi just keeps on beating on him. Dustin eventually fights back, but is dropped quickly, and Malachi goes to toss Dustin, but he buckles and falls in the middle of the ring. And Dustin does eventually fight back. He goes for a power slam, but Malachi stops and goes for a kick, and Dustin then hits the power slam anyways. Goes for a Canadian Destroyer, but his knee was giving out, and Malachi basically stops him, and it turns into just a sunset flip roll-up, and he gets a near fall. And Dustin beats on Malachi in the corner, and he kicks him off and sets up in the corner and hits a big knee, similar to a V-trigger from Kenny. Malachi then rolls out of the ring and grabs Cody's boot from under the ring and tosses it at Dustin. And Malachi tries to kick Dustin, but he blocks it, and then he hits a Canadian Destroyer for a near fall. And Dustin goes for a suplex, but Malachi slides out, trips Dustin into the exposed corner, and hits the spinning heel kick for the win. Malachi Black defeats Dustin Rhodes. It was a fantastic match, all honesty. We're pretty much expecting Malachi to run through the Nightmare Factory until we found out later in the show through just a picture that it is Malachi Black versus Cody Rhodes at the Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York. So we're clearly he's going to take out the entire Nightmare family until that point. And I'm looking forward to it. It's similar to how they booked Brody Lee. He came in, dominated everybody, wrecked house, took out Cody, made him think he was not as good. Cody's got to come back and step up his game twice as hard. I'm looking forward to it for sure. For my Malteser scale, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Very solid match through and through. Obviously, comparing to All Out, where every match was like a 4-star match and better, it's really difficult to match that level of intensity every single night. Then the Lucha Brothers talk about their win at All Out and says that anybody who wants to suffer is welcome to try. Then CM Punk makes his way to the ring. He thanks Darby, Sting, and the fans. Said it was like riding a violent bicycle. He then puts over the main event and says he'll be watching it like a fan. Talks about Moxley, talks about all the debuts, and he talks about what's next. And asks the fans what they think should be next. And they all chant different names. You get... I think there was a Jungle Boy, an MJF, just a bunch of different chants going on. We then get Taz getting on the mic, and Punk tells him to never interrupt him again. Taz says he's tired of CM Punk's love fest, and he never wants to hear Punk talk about a member of Team Taz again. Punk says he respects Taz, so to send Starks, Hook, or even Hobbs, and says, beat me if you can, survive if I let you. And then he drops the mic. We then get Proud and Powerful saying they're putting the tag division on notice that they are the best. And I think they said they are coming for the tag titles now that they have beaten FTR. We also get Ruby Soho talking with Tony Schiavone about coming to AEW. She says she had issued an open challenge to prove she isn't a fluke. And Britt Baker interrupts Ruby and says that Jamie will beat her and so will she. And Ruby says that she helped Britt get into the business and says that she calls herself all these nicknames because she doesn't want to be seen for what she isn't. Britt tells her nickname is the Runaway and tells her to run away to catering like you did for the last 4 years. Ruby gets mad and goes to brawl with Britt, but she quickly says, Jamie needs to get ready for her match, and I need to prep for our title match, and they leave. We then get a singles match between Powerhouse Hobbs and Dante Martin. And Dante does the smart thing. He jumps Hobbs right from the start, but Hobbs is the bigger dude and just knocks him down. Hobbs just overpowers Dante the entire time, catches him midair, and then Dante actually has to use the ropes. He uses the bottom rope to spring over top of Hobbs, and then send him to the outside, where he then hits a dive. But he was caught and sent flying into the ring post. Hobbs then tosses Dante around the outside of the ring and into the post, into the barricades, pretty much into whatever he can, and then literally tosses him into the ring. And then Dante does start to fight back, but he was stopped, and Hobbs continues to beat on Dante. Hobbs then drives his knee right into the stomach of Dante and continues to beat down on him as he is. And Hobbs goes to drop a knee, and Dante moves, hits a drop kick from the top, and then another kick to Hobbs to the outside. Dante goes for a dive, and Hook gets in the way, so Dante just jumps over him instead. And then back in the ring, Dante starts to roll, but Hobbs hits a huge power bomb, and that finishes it. Powerhouse Hobbs defeats Dante Martin. For my Malteser scale, I gave this a 3 out of 5. It was a really solid match. I mean, we're booking Powerhouse Hobbs to likely be CM Punk's next opponent, because I don't see it being Hook, and I don't see it being Starks either. They, like, as much as they might be good enough to compete against Punk, the credible challenge is definitely Powerhouse Hobbs. He poses a much more difficult threat to Punk as a bigger opponent than Punk is himself. So it makes perfect sense that we're booking Hobbs, a young guy, again, like Darby was, to be up against Punk, some fight we never thought we would see. Definitely looking forward to it. I think I already mentioned, but my Malteser scale, I gave it a 3 out of 5. It was a really solid match. After the match, Dan Lambert and the Men of the Year talk about all of AEW's signings being small guys. Literally said they were 5'8" or lower. I don't know how many people are aware of this, because I personally wasn't aware of it, and I wanted to check. CM Punk is 6'1". He's not a short guy. Like, we need to stop that narrative, at least about Punk. Like, if you're a good wrestler, your height doesn't matter. I'm sorry. Says the truth is that AEW is not the hottest thing in pro wrestling. False. It says the only real men in AEW are Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page. Dan asks any top guys to come beat them to prove them wrong. I wonder who's going to answer this call next week. Matt Hardy then talks about Orange, and he wants to shave his head. Orange responds and says, whatever. MJF makes his way to the ring, and he says that he beat Jericho 3 times and said he's beaten him a 4th time, but it was overturned because everyone is biased. Shits on Cincinnati, calls the crowd cowards, and then turns to Brian Pillman's family. He gets in their face and calls them ugly, like Brian Pillman Sr. Brian Pillman Jr. makes his way to the ring, and this is Brian's hometown, for those who don't know. Brian says that he knows MJF thinks he's the best, but where he's from, they breed badasses, like himself, his dad, and Jon Moxley. MJF calls out his mom and how she should have swallowed Brian. MJF tells Wardlow to go stand in the corner and look pretty, because at this point, Wardlow was basically acting as a barrier between the two. I think we are going to see Wardlow turn on MJF very soon. MJF then tells Pillman to get out of the ring, and Pillman jumps him, and Wardlow stops him quickly. But Pillman gets away and beats on MJF still, and he just gets laid out by Wardlow. Griff Garrison comes in, and he makes the save, but Brian just, he tries to save Brian, but Griff just gets laid out by Wardlow, and they both get dropped. Griff gets hit with the beautiful Diamond Dozen ring, which is it was a nice nice moment. Well, we eventually set up. I think we talk about it a bit later. It sets up for a match at the Arthur Ashe Stadium, which is really cool. We then get Moxley talking about his main event match against Minoru Suzuki, and he says that Minoru is in the jungle and he's gonna die. We then get a singles match between Jamie Hayter with Britt Baker and Rebel, not Reba, in her background, in her corner, versus Ruby Soho. And they lock up, and Jamie backs Ruby into the corner, and they go back and forth exchanging holds. Ruby then runs at Jamie, and she sends her into the ropes, and then kicks her and sends her outside. Jamie then sends Ruby into the barricade, and Rebel and Britt taunt Ruby, and I believe they mess with her while the ref is distracted as well. Ruby then fights back for a moment, but is quickly stopped and gets a near fall. Jamie does there. Jamie then sends Ruby into the corner multiple times, and Ruby then reverses Jamie and sends her into the corner face first and hits multiple running kicks to Jamie. Ruby then uses the ropes for a big DDT to get a near fall, and then Jamie puts Ruby in an electric chair position, and basically it looked like they lost their balance, and they did the best they could with the situation. And Ruby sends Jamie face first into the mat. Jamie then hits a big neck breaker and follows it up with a big elbow for a near fall. Jamie then runs at Ruby, and Ruby hits what to me looked like a Pele kick, but I'm not 100% certain there. And she gets the win. Ruby Soho defeats Jamie Hayter. It was a really good match. It establishes Ruby as a legitimate competitor. We've already seen Jamie. We know she's a solid competitor for AEW. We had to establish Ruby as a genuine threat for Britt. And yeah, I'm looking forward to their match. I imagine this is also going to fall at the Arthur Ashe Stadium show. And so for my Malteser scale, I gave it a 3.25 out of 5. Like I said, a very, very solid match. After the match, Britt Baker jumps Ruby, and Riho comes out to make the save, but is quickly stopped by Britt, and she sets up for a curb stomp on the belt on Ruby, but Chris Statlander comes out to make the save. We then move on to a trios tag team match, FTR and Shawn Spears, the Pinnacle, versus the Dark Order, Evil Uno, Stu Grayson, and John Silver. John tags himself in to start out, and goes against Spears, and they go back and forth with some big moves, and Silver and Stu, reluctantly, I might add, double team Spears, but he stops it and takes Stu to his corner and tags in Cash. After a bit of back and forth, Stu eventually is back in, or makes a comeback, and with a big kick, and then Stu and Uno double team Spears for a near fall. We then follow this up with a triple team from the Dark Order, and they get another near fall on Spears. Spears then hits a jawbreaker, and Dax comes in and takes control. Dax and John go back and forth for a little bit, and John hits a big brainbuster, goes for the tag, but Spears and Cash took out the Dark Order, and the Pinnacle jumps John. He takes them all out for a moment, hits a big German for a near fall, but Dax then sends John into Uno, who was getting back up on the apron, hits a slingshot suplex. The Pinnacle then followed up with a triple team on Silver for the win. The Pinnacle defeats the Dark Order. For my Malteser scale, I gave this a 3 out of 5. It was a very solid match. I loved it. I'm not a fan that it seems like we're hinting at we might be breaking up the Dark Order, especially with what happened after the match. Uno yells at Silver, and he pushes Uno, and Stu then takes out John, and 5 comes in to take out Stu. 10 and Cabana come in to just hold the peace, and all as Anna Jay and Ty Conti look on the ramp. I really don't want to see the Dark Order break up. I hope as much as I don't think we need to move them to a new leader, it looks like we are booking them for a new leader, which is fine. I just hope they do it right and keep respect for Brody during this whole thing. I do not want to see the Dark Order ever break up. Ever. The women who lost the Battle Royal talk about what's next for them. A bunch of them are basically just saying they're going to continue vying for the championship match whenever they can get one. Kelly then talks about real leadership and tells Darby and Sting he's going to put an end to it all next week. It'll be Darby versus Spears. And he says Sting and himself might have to even go at it, which I'm excited for because that's an old rivalry from years and years ago. We then get Bryan and Griff talking about what MJF did, and Bryan says that in the Arthur Ashe Stadium, he is going to face MJF. And just kind of as he's finishing that, the Acclaimed interrupt him, and Max says that he also vied for a match, and he has one with Pillman on Rampage this week. Tony Schiavone then welcomes the Elite to the ring, and Don just immediately takes the mic and talks about how Kenny is PWI's top 500 wrestler for 2021. Talks about how the Bucks gave the best tag match ever, and then they got their titles stolen from them. And then Nick says that they will be getting the titles back. But speaking of getting things back, they got their best friend, Adam Cole, baby. He's back. Adam Cole makes his way to the ring and gets in Tony's face and says that if he even looks the wrong way at Britt, he will slap the glasses off his face. Tells him to get out of the ring. Nerd. Cole then tells AEW, or calls AEW the greatest company in the world because of the Elite. Says that he is now with the best and talks about the Bucks and Kenny and says that the Elite is complete, baby. And says next week he will make his in-ring debut. Kenny then takes the mic and says that he hates interruptions and immediately gets interrupted by Bryan Danielson. Bryan makes his way to the ring and Kenny asks for the ring from the Elite, and the Elite clears out and they stand ringside and Bryan comes in. Bryan takes the mic from Kenny and asks if the fans want to see Bryan Danielson versus Kenny Omega. And Kenny's saying it doesn't work like that. And Bryan says that, well, it should work like that because if you think you're the best, you should want to take on the best. And I think I am the best. Says Kenny is not even on his level. Kenny then goes to jump Bryan, but Bryan is one of the best performers in the world. He reverses it, locks in the label lock, and Kenny's tapping as the Elite comes in to make the save. And Jurassic Express and Christian Cage come in, and as well as Frankie Kazarian come in to make the save, and they clear the ring of the Elite, minus Brandon Cutler, who's left for fodder. Cutler gets laid out with a big knee by Bryan, and then runs away with the Elite. We then get our main event of the evening, Jon Moxley versus Minoru Suzuki. And they exchange shots right off the bat with first with big elbows and then big boots. And Suzuki then starts to chop Moxley. Moxley returns the favor with a big shot and then sends Minoru into the ropes. And Suzuki locks in a submission inside of the ropes and then takes it to the outside. And sends Moxley into the ring posts and targets Moxley's shoulder. Back in the ring, Minoru locks in a armbar and wears down Moxley. And they exchange shots again, and Suzuki kicks Moxley into the corner and then runs at him. But Moxley explodes out and hits a huge clothesline, turning Suzuki inside out, and it follows it up with a big brainbuster for a near fall. Suzuki then boots Moxley into the corner and runs at him, but Moxley catches the kick that was coming the second time. And then they exchange bites, headbutts, and then elbows. Minoru then locks in a sleeper. He goes for the Gotch-style pile driver, but Moxley fights out excuse me, and hits the paradigm shift and a clothesline for a near fall. Suzuki just won't go down after this and powers through all of Moxley's offense, and Suzuki then hits a drop kick. Minoru then locks in the sleeper. He goes to switch to the Gotch-style pile driver. During that transition, Moxley slips out, hits the paradigm shift, and gets the win. Jon Moxley defeats Minoru Suzuki. For my Malteser scale, I gave it a 4.25 out of 5. It was exactly what you would expect this match to be. They did everything that they could have in the 10-15 minutes they were given. It was a fantastic show, fantastic match. These guys, I would pay to watch Minoru Suzuki and Jon Moxley go at it again in the exact same match, basically. Like I said, Malteser scale, I gave it a 4.25 out of 5. Absolutely fantastic. And Moxley celebrates with his hometown fans as Dynamite goes off the air. For my overall for the show, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. It was a very solid show. Great come off of All Out. But when you are coming off of All Out, of course, this show is not going to look as hot as All Out was. So, while a 3.5 is very good, doesn't compare to the perfection that was All Out. My match of the night, it goes to the main event, Jon Moxley versus Minoru Suzuki. They did fantastic. For my segment of the night, it is The Elite is complete. They did I'm so happy, so happy. I really thought we were going to get Adam Cole versus The Elite, but no, it's Adam Cole and The Elite. And for my performers of the night, it goes to Jon Moxley and Minoru Suzuki. Of course it does, because they just absolutely dominated. I don't know if I mentioned it, but during one of the paradigm shifts, Minoru's eye got incredibly bloody. It was brutal, absolutely. But unfortunately, that is all for this episode of Walking the Ropes Wrestling Review. Thank you all for dropping in. If you did enjoy, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notifications whenever we upload a video. And I'll see you in the next one.